Okay, this is the third question, which regarding marriage, divorce, and remarriage, which is talking about Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4, where it's, so the question is, doesn't Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4 clearly forbid a man to return to his original spouse? Because if you read Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4, let me see if I can get it up here for you. It says, sorry, it's a little bit slow, but okay, here it is. It says, when a man hath taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand, and send her out of his house. And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. Look at this verse in verse 2 of Deuteronomy 24. God is telling her she may go and be another man's wife, and he is not putting the label of adultery, of an adulteress on her. So obviously there's something different going on over here. Now let's read verse 3. And if the latter husband hate her, and write her a bill of divorcement, and giveth it in her hand, and sendeth her out of his house, or if the latter husband die which took her to be his wife, her former husband which sent her away may not take her again to be his wife. After that she is defiled, for this is an abomination before the Lord. And thou shalt not cause the land to sin, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. So this is where many pastors today say, if you are in a remarriage that the New Testament calls adultery, you cannot return to your original spouse, because Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4 forbids it. So that's so the question is it true? Does Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4 really forbid it? The problem is with this. The Bible also says, what God has joined together, let not man separate, okay, or let not man put asunder. So when a person is trying to keep separated what God himself has joined, they're in direct opposition to the commandment of God himself, which is a very dangerous position to be in. God clearly says, what he has joined, let not man separate. This truth does not live up to scrutiny when the Pharisees brought it before Jesus. When the Pharisees came, they asked Jesus about Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4. In fact, I'm not sure if it was the Pharisees or if it was the disciples themselves. Anyway, Jesus rebuked them. He did not say, yes, this is a truth for today. Let's apply it today. If you are remarried, stay as you are. He called the remarriage, friend, time and again, adultery, which is what we ought to be calling it. If we called what God calls adultery rather than marriage, it'd be a lot more clear what marriages are adultery and which ones are not. I mean, just like Planned Parenthood, nobody drives by Planned Parenthood and knows exactly what they're all about unless they really have studied and know Planned Parenthood. But if those Planned Parenthood buildings took their sign down and put baby killing buildings, we will remove the baby out of your womb at your earliest convenience. You know, if you put a sign like that up, a lot more people are going to, it's going to tell a lot more truth about what it really is. It's not Planned Parenthood. It really is the removal of life. And less people will be prone to enter into those buildings probably if they were labeled that. It's the same thing here. You know, we have to be careful if a remarriage is a situation that God calls adultery, where a previous spouse is still alive, then that's what we need to be calling it. We should not be calling it a marriage. Now, Jesus clearly said that Moses allowed this because of the hardness of their hearts, and from the beginning it was not so. And what did Jesus take them back to? He did not take them back to Deuteronomy 24. He took them back to creation. You know, if you read Matthew 19, 3 through 12, yes, it was the Pharisees that came to him. They came to him and they were tempting him, asking him this. And then Jesus said in verse 5, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the twain shall be one flesh. The twain shall be one flesh. So, when God says it's one flesh, and then and then in verse 6 it says, wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man put asunder. Think about that, friend. Think about what God is saying. He's making it so clear that the two become one flesh. It's like if you mix red paint with yellow paint. What do you get? You get orange paint. Can you ever turn that orange paint back to red and yellow? You can't. And now that's a crazy analogy, but you know, something happens at the marriage altar with one man and one woman that God joins them and they become one flesh. And that means never again, never again. The only thing that the Bible says that dissolves that marriage bond is death. So never again will they become two fleshes where they can go join themselves to another. They are still one flesh in God's eyes. No more twain, but one flesh. And then then they asked him, well, why did Moses then command give a bill of divorcement? He said unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered you to put your wives away, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and marry another, committeth adultery. Look what it says here, and whosoever marrieth her which is put away commits adultery. That does not matter. It doesn't even say if she's innocent or guilty. Marrying someone who is previously divorced is adultery in the eyes of God. And then what did his disciples say after the Pharisees came to him? His disciples came and said, if this be the case with a man, if the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. You know, why were they so shocked? Because they understood marriage to be what Jesus understood it to be. Have you ever wondered why they responded like this? Because this is how permanent marriage is. It's so permanent that you cannot divorce for any reason. And so they thought it better not to marry. But then Jesus said unto them, all men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. And then he says, for there are some eunuchs which were born from their mother's womb, and there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men. When a person is put away, they have been made a eunuch by men. They are called to live in the service of the king for the kingdom of heaven's sake. This is their only option. And 1 Corinthians 7:11 reiterates that. They're to remain unmarried or be reconciled. That's their only option. And so remarriage is not an option. And if it's the case, it must be repented of just like any other sin. And then that verse ends, and there be some eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. So I hope this answers the question for Deuteronomy 24:1-4. Another thing to think about, friend. Notice that in Deuteronomy 24:1-4, the woman is not called an adulteress when she remarries. And notice that she is in the New Testament. And also notice in Jeremiah 3, I want to read you Jeremiah 3. This is God himself talks about, he said, it right here, they say, God is saying, they say, if a man put away his wife, and she go from him, and become another man's, shall he return unto her again? Shall not the land be greatly polluted? But thou hast played the harlot with many lovers. This is God talking to Israel. But then what does he say at the end of that verse? Yet return again unto me, saith the Lord. Yet return again unto me. That's God's heart. God's heart is always the heart of reconciliation and restoration. God himself did away with Deuteronomy 24:4. Otherwise, he would be committing an abomination. But he's not. He said, yet return unto me. There's other verses in the Old Testament. You can look them up. David, his wife Michal, which was his first wife, David was condemned for his polygamy and his adultery, but he was never condemned for taking Michal back. Michal was remarried. Saul gave her to another man after she had been David's wife, and David took her. He said, give me back my wife, and he took her. And another situation is Hosea and Gomer. Gomer went and married, I don't know how many other people she married. Clearly she married at least one or more other people. And what did she say? Hosea kept taking her back, waiting for her to come back to him. That's God's heart. And she said, I will return again to my first husband. First husband, because she had been married before. So we have to just make sure that we don't just look at Deuteronomy 24 and use that as an excuse, and then end up in direct obedience against God, trying to keep separated what God himself has joined together. I hope this helps.